Chapter 1. The Last Stand. The alarms blared as Captain Lara Novak rushed through the corridors of the UES Valiant, her heart pounding in her chest. The Zorgon fleet had appeared out of nowhere, catching the Earth Defense Forces off guard. As the commanding officer of humanity's most advanced warship, Lara knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on her shoulders. "Status report!" Lara barked as she burst onto the bridge, her eyes scanning the holographic displays. "Captain, we're outnumbered 10-1, Lieutenant Kayadachi replied, his fingers flying across the control panel. "The Zorgons have us surrounded." Lara gritted her teeth. The Zorgons, with their superior technology and ruthless tactics, had been pushing humanity to the brink of extinction for months. The Valiant was the last line of defense, a beacon of hope in a war that seemed all but lost. "We're not going down without a fight," Lara declared, taking her seat in the captain's chair. "Divert all power to shields and weapons. Helm, prepare for evasive maneuvers." The bridge crew sprang into action, their faces etched with determination. Lara watched as the Zorgon ships grew larger on the viewscreen, their angular hulls bristling with advanced weaponry. "Incoming fire!" Ensign Ava Patel shouted from the tactical station. The Valiant shuddered as a barrage of plasma bolts slammed into its shields. Sparks flew from overloaded consoles, and the acrid smell of burnt electronics filled the air. "Shields holding at 70%, Kai reported, his voice strained. Lara's mind raced as she formulated a plan. The Valiant was outgunned and outmatched, but she refused to surrender. She had sworn an oath to protect humanity, and she would fulfill that promise no matter the cost. "Target their lead ship's engines," Lara commanded, her eyes narrowing. "We'll show them what humans are made of." The Valiant's weapons powered up, its advanced targeting systems locking onto the Zorgon flagship. Lara held her breath as a volley of quantum torpedoes streaked through space, their blue trails cutting through the darkness. The torpedoes found their mark, and the Zorgon flagship erupted in a blinding flash of light. Cheers erupted on the bridge as the enemy ship listed to one side, its engines sputtering and dying. But the celebration was short-lived. The remaining Zorgon ships closed in, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. Lara knew that the Valiant couldn't withstand another onslaught, but she refused to back down. "Helm, set a collision course with the nearest Zorgon ship," Lara ordered, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. "We'll take them with us." As the Valiant surged forward, Lara closed her eyes, thoughts of Earth and the billions of lives depending on her, filling her mind. This was humanity's last stand, and she would make it count. The Valiant slammed into the Zorgon ship, and the world around Lara exploded in a blinding flash of light. As consciousness slipped away, she whispered a final prayer, hoping that her sacrifice would not be in vain. Chapter 2. Survival and Revelations. Darkness enveloped Lara as she drifted in and out of consciousness. The muffled sounds of distant explosions and the hiss of escaping air filled her ears. She gasped, her lungs burning as she struggled to breathe. With a trembling hand, she reached for her emergency oxygen mask, securing it over her face. As her vision cleared, Lara found herself surrounded by the shattered remains of the Valiant's bridge. Sparks danced across the twisted metal, casting an eerie glow in the dim emergency lighting. She pulled herself to her feet, wincing as pain shot through her battered body. "Is anyone there?" Lara called out, her voice muffled by the mask. "Kai? Ava?" Silence was her only answer. Lara's heart sank as the realization of her crew's fate settled over her. She was alone, adrift in the wreckage of humanity's last hope. Lara stumbled through the debris, making her way to the escape pods. As she reached the pod bay, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Lara instinctively reached for her sidearm. "Captain Novak, wait!" the figure called out, stepping into the light. It was Dr. Ezra Malik, the Valiant's chief science officer. "Ezra? How did you survive? Lara asked, lowering her weapon. I was in the lab when the attack began, Ezra explained, his voice shaking. I managed to make it to the escape pods, but the others… Lara nodded grimly, understanding the unspoken truth. She and Ezra were the only survivors of the Valiant's final stand. As they prepared to board the escape pod, a strange energy signature appeared on the pod's scanner. Lara frowned, studying the readings. That's not possible, she muttered. It's a Zorgon distress signal, but it's coming from an uncharted planet. Ezra leaned in, his eyes widening. Captain, this could be a trap. Lara hesitated, weighing their options. They could follow the distress signal and risk falling into a Zorgon ambush, or they could drift aimlessly in space, hoping for a rescue that might never come. We have to take the chance, Lara decided, her jaw set with determination. If there are survivors, human or Zorgon, we have a duty to investigate. Ezra nodded, and together they boarded the escape pod. As the pod jettisoned from the Valiant's wreckage, Lara watched the remains of her ship disappear into the void. She silently vowed to uncover the truth behind the mysterious distress signal and to continue the fight for humanity's survival, no matter the odds. The escape pod hurtled through space, carrying Lara and Ezra toward an unknown fate on the uncharted planet. Little did they know that their journey would lead them to uncover secrets that would change the course of the war and challenge everything they believed about the Zorgons and humanity's place in the galaxy. Chapter 3. Uncharted Territory. As the escape pod descended through the atmosphere of the uncharted planet, Lara and Ezra braced themselves for impact. The pod shook violently, its heat shield glowing red as it battled against the friction of entry. With a jarring thud, the pod crashed into the planet's surface, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris. Lara groaned, her head throbbing from the impact. She unbuckled her harness and turned to check on Ezra, who was already pulling himself to his feet. "Are you all right?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Ezra nodded, rubbing his neck. "I'll live. Where are we?" Lara activated the pod's external cameras, revealing a desolate landscape of rugged mountains and deep canyons. The sky was a sickly green, and the air was thick with a hazy mist. "I don't know," Lara admitted, "but we need to find that distress signal." They gathered what supplies they could from the pod's emergency kit and set out into the unknown terrain. As they trekked through the canyons, Lara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. She scanned the cliffs above, her hand resting on the butt of her pistol. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the ridge above them. Lara and Ezra froze, their hearts pounding. The figure was tall and slender, with metallic skin that glinted in the eerie light. It was a Zorgon, but unlike any they had ever seen before. The Zorgon raised its hands in a gesture of peace. "Please, do not be alarmed," it said, its voice surprisingly human. "I mean you no harm." Lara and Ezra exchanged a wary glance. "Who are you?" Lara demanded, her grip tightening on her weapon. "My name is Zarin," the Zorgon replied, "and I am the one who sent the distress signal." Lara's eyes narrowed. Why would a Zorgon send a distress signal to humans? Zarin's expression was unreadable, but there was a hint of desperation in its voice. "Because I need your help. My people are not what you think they are. There is a great danger that threatens us all, and only by working together can we hope to survive." Lara and Ezra were stunned. The idea of a Zorgon asking for human help was unthinkable, but as they looked into Zarin's eyes, they saw a glimmer of something they never expected to find in an enemy: humanity. Against her better judgment, Lara lowered her weapon. "Tell us everything," she said, "and maybe we can find a way to end this war once and for all." Zarin nodded, and together they set off deeper into the canyons, unaware of the incredible journey that lay ahead. As they walked, Lara couldn't help but wonder what secrets this strange planet held, and what role she and Ezra would play in the fate of both their species. Chapter 4. Unlikely Allies. As Lara, Ezra, and Zarin ventured deeper into the canyons, an uneasy silence hung between them. Lara couldn't shake the feeling that she was making a mistake by trusting a Zorgon, but something about Zarin's demeanor suggested sincerity. "So, Zarin," Ezra broke the silence, "what's this great danger you mentioned?" Zarin's metallic features seemed to tighten. "It's a long story, but suffice it to say that the Zorgons you've been fighting are not the true enemy. We are merely pawns in a much larger game." Lara frowned. "What do you mean?" "There is a faction within our government, a group of extremists, who believe that the only way to ensure our survival is to eradicate all other species in the galaxy. They are the ones who started this war, not the Zorgon people as a whole." Ezra shook his head in disbelief. "But why? What do they hope to gain?" "Power," Zarin replied grimly. "They believe that by conquering the galaxy, they can ensure our dominance for generations to come. But they are wrong. Their actions will only lead to our destruction." As they walked, Zarin told them more about the extremist faction and their plans. Lara listened intently, her mind racing with the implications of what she was hearing. If what Zarin said was true, then everything she had believed about the Zorgons was wrong. Suddenly, Zarin stopped in his tracks, his eyes widening in alarm. "Get down!" he shouted, tackling Lara and Ezra to the ground just as a barrage of laser fire erupted from the cliffs above. Lara rolled to her feet, her pistol drawn. What the hell was that? Zarin's expression was grim. "Scouts. They must have followed me here." More laser fire rained down on them, forcing them to take cover behind a rocky outcropping. Lara returned fire, her shots ineffective against the scouts' advanced armor. "We need to get out of here," Ezra shouted over the din of battle. Zarin nodded. "Follow me! I know a place where we can hide!" They ran, dodging laser fire and scrambling over rocky terrain. Lara's heart pounded in her ears, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had never run from a fight before, but she knew that they were outmatched. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. Zarin motioned for them to follow him inside, and they squeezed through the opening, emerging into a hidden cave system. "We should be safe here for now," Zarin said, his voice echoing in the darkness. Lara leaned against the cave wall, catching her breath. "Zarin, if what you're saying is true, then we need to find a way to stop these extremists before it's too late." Zarin nodded. "Agreed, but it won't be easy. They are well connected and heavily armed. We will need allies if we hope to succeed." Ezra spoke up. "What about the other Zorgons? Surely there are those who oppose the extremists." "There are," Zarin confirmed, "but they are scattered and disorganized. We will need to find a way to unite them if we hope to stand a chance." Lara's mind raced with possibilities. She had never imagined that she would be fighting alongside a Zorgon, but if it meant saving both their species from destruction, then she was willing to do whatever it took. "All right," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Let's get to work." Chapter 5. Gathering Forces. As the unlikely trio made their way through the winding cave system, Lara couldn't help but marvel at the strange turn her life had taken. Just days ago, she had been prepared to die in battle against the Zorgons, and now she found herself allied with one of them, fighting to save both their species from annihilation. Zarin led them deeper into the caves, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of danger. "We must be cautious," he warned. "The extremists have eyes and ears everywhere." Lara nodded, her grip tightening on her pistol. She had never been one to back down from a fight, but even she had to admit that the odds were stacked against them. Suddenly, Zarin stopped, holding up a hand for silence. Lara and Ezra froze, straining their ears to hear what had caught the Zorgons' attention. At first, there was nothing but the drip of water and the distant echoes of their own breathing. Then, faintly, they heard it. Voices coming from somewhere up ahead. Zarin motioned for them to follow him, and they crept forward, hugging the shadows. As they drew closer, the voices grew louder, and Lara could make out snippets of conversation. "Can't keep hiding like this. We need to take action." "And what would you have us do?" "We're outnumbered and outgunned." "We have to try. If we don't, we're as good as dead anyway." Zarin exchanged a glance with Lara and Ezra, then stepped out into the open, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Friends," he called out, his voice echoing through the cavern, "we come in peace." There was a moment of tense silence. Then a group of Zorgons emerged from the shadows, their weapons trained on the intruders. Lara's heart raced as she recognized the insignia on their armor, the mark of the Zorgon resistance. "Zarin," one of the Zorgons said, lowering his weapon. "We thought you were dead." Zarin shook his head. "Not yet, old friend, and I've brought allies." He gestured to Lara and Ezra, who stepped forward cautiously. The Zorgons eyed them warily but lowered their weapons. "Humans," the leader said, his tone skeptical. "What could they possibly offer us?" Lara stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. "We offer a chance to end this war once and for all, to stop the extremists and save both our species from destruction." The Zorgons exchanged glances, murmuring amongst themselves. Finally, the leader nodded. "Very well. We will hear you out. But know this: if you betray us, you will pay with your lives." Lara nodded, her jaw set with determination. "Understood." Over the next few hours, Lara and Zarin laid out their plan to the resistance fighters. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance they had. They would need to gather their forces, strike at the heart of the extremist faction, and expose their true nature to the Zorgon people. It would be a dangerous mission, fraught with peril at every turn. But Lara knew that they had no choice. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and she would do whatever it took to see this through to the end. As they prepared to set out, Ezra pulled Lara aside, his eyes filled with concern. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "We're talking about going up against an entire army." Lara met his gaze, her own eyes blazing with determination. "I'm sure," she said. "This is what we signed up for, Ezra. This is what it means to be a guardian of the galactic frontier." With that, they set out, a ragtag band of humans and Zorgons united in their quest for peace. The road ahead would be long and treacherous, but Lara knew that they would face it together, no matter what the cost. Chapter 6. The Final Confrontation. As the newly formed alliance of humans and Zorgons set out on their quest, a sense of determination filled the air. Lara, Ezra, and Zarin led the way, their steps purposeful and their eyes fixed on the horizon. They knew the challenges that lay ahead, but they were ready to face them head-on. The journey was long and arduous, taking them through treacherous terrain and hostile environments. They encountered pockets of resistance along the way, Zorgon extremists who were determined to stop them at any cost. But the alliance stood strong, fighting side by side and watching each other's backs. As they drew closer to the heart of the extremist faction, the battles became more intense. The enemy was well-armed and well-trained, and they fought with a fanatical devotion to their cause. But Lara and her allies refused to give up, pushing forward with grim determination. Finally, they reached their destination, a massive fortress that served as the headquarters of the extremist faction. The walls were high and heavily fortified, bristling with weapons and defenses. It seemed an impossible task to breach its defenses, but Lara knew that they had no choice. "This is it," she said. turning to face her allies. "Everything we fought for, everything we've sacrificed, it all comes down to this moment. We will not fail. We cannot fail." The others nodded, their faces set with the same determination. Together, they charged forward, a united front against the darkness. The battle was fierce and bloody, with casualties on both sides. But the Alliance fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Lara led the charge, her pistol blazing and her voice ringing out above the chaos. In the end, it was Zarin who dealt the final blow, sacrificing himself to destroy the extremist leader and his inner circle. As the fortress crumbled around them, Lara and Ezra emerged victorious, battered and bleeding, but alive. In the aftermath of the battle, the truth about the extremist faction was revealed to the Zorgon people. The war was finally over, and a new era of peace and cooperation dawned across the galaxy. Lara stood atop the ruins of the fortress, looking out over the battlefield. She thought of all those who had fallen, human and Zorgon alike, and knew that their sacrifices had not been in vain. "We did it," she said, her voice heavy with emotion. "We saved the galaxy." Ezra placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort and solidarity. "No," he said softly. "You saved the galaxy, Lara. You brought us all together, showed us that we're stronger united than we ever could be alone." Lara shook her head, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "We did it together," she said. "Humans and Zorgons, fighting side by side. That's the real victory here." As the sun set over the battlefield, casting a warm glow over the ruined landscape, Lara knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There was still much work to be done, wounds to heal, and bridges to build. But she also knew that they had taken the first step, and that there was hope for a brighter future. Together, the guardians of the galactic frontier walked into the sunset, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They had proven that even in the darkest of times, there was always a chance for redemption, for unity, and for peace. Chapter 7. A New Dawn. As the sun rose over the battlefield, casting a warm glow across the ruined landscape, Lara and Ezra stood side by side, surveying the aftermath of the final confrontation. The air was heavy with the scent of smoke and the echoes of the fallen, but there was also a sense of hope, a feeling that something had changed. Lara looked out over the gathered survivors, a mix of humans and Zorgons united in their shared victory. "We have done the impossible," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "We have shown that even in the darkest of times, there is always a chance for redemption, for unity, and for peace." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices rising as one. Lara felt a swell of emotion in her chest, a sense of pride and purpose that she had never known before. She turned to Ezra, who stood beside her, his eyes shining with the same fierce determination. "What now?" he asked, his voice low and steady. Lara took a deep breath, considering the question. "Now, we rebuild," she said. "We forge a new future, one where humans and Zorgons can live side by side in peace and cooperation." It would not be an easy task, she knew. There were still those on both sides who harbored hatred and mistrust, who would resist the idea of a united galaxy. But Lara was determined to see it through, to build a lasting peace that would endure for generations to come. In the days and weeks that followed, Lara and her allies worked tirelessly to spread the message of unity across the galaxy. They met with leaders on both sides, negotiating treaties and agreements that would lay the foundation for a new era of cooperation. There were setbacks and challenges along the way, moments when it seemed that the old divisions would never truly heal. But Lara refused to give up, pushing forward with the same grim determination that had carried her through the darkest moments of the war. And slowly, steadily, things began to change. The Zorgon people, freed from the grip of the extremist faction, embraced the idea of peace and cooperation with their human neighbors. Trade routes were established, cultural exchanges were arranged, and a new sense of understanding began to take root. Lara watched it all unfold with a sense of pride and wonder, knowing that she had played a part in shaping this new future. She thought of Zarin, of the sacrifice he had made to bring about this change, and knew that his legacy would live on in the hearts and minds of all those who had fought alongside him. As the months turned into years, Lara continued to serve as a guardian of the galactic frontier, working to maintain the fragile peace that had been so hard won. She knew that there would always be challenges and threats to face, but she also knew that she would never stop fighting for what was right. And so, as the sun set on another day, Lara stood tall and proud, a symbol of hope and unity for all those who looked to her for guidance. She had started as an underdog, facing impossible odds, but she had emerged as a hero, a guardian of the galaxy, and a beacon of light in the darkness. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. As long as there were those like Lara and her allies ready to stand up and fight for what they believed in, there would always be hope for a brighter tomorrow.